welcome back to some more geometry. Today, we are talking about trigonometry. So let's go over a couple things about trigonometry. First off, it is a Greek word that means triangle measure. So it sees the relationship between angles and their lengths. Astronomers use this a lot to kind of help find the distance between places using kind of like the star placement. And of course, our father of trigonometry right here, he compiled the first trigonometric table. Now that table has 0 through 360, the individual decimal values of both sine, cosine, tangent of all those numbers. So it's a pretty crazy thing that happened back in the day. But let's look at our first ratio. So we're going to look at the tangent ratio. Before we look at that, let's kind of take this triangle here. So everything is based off a right triangle. So you know you have a right angle. Your hypotenuse is always your hypotenuse. As you see, we have this symbol right here. It's called theta. It's a Greek letter. We usually use it to represent an angle. Now, as you can see, there's three words: hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. So these words right here are placed here based off where the theta is at. So for example, if this is the angle we're going to be using, this is our theta. So this side then will be called the opposite side because it's opposite of the angle. This is called the adjacent side, meaning it's right next to it. And then we get the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always across from the right angle, so it's called the hypotenuse. But what if we decided, you know what, I'm going to put my theta somewhere else. I'm going to put my theta up here. So my theta is up here this time. Now that changes these two. This is now considered the opposite side, and this is considered the adjacent side. So that's very important to refer to and understand how those two sides' name are based off where the theta is at. But what doesn't change is your hypotenuse. Now, the tangent ratio looks at the it's a ratio between the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. If you remember, ratios are just comparing two numbers, two or more numbers. So for us, we're comparing the opposite side to the adjacent side. That's how tangent works. So we do the tangent of an angle. So if you were to put this in a calculator, it has the exact same value as by taking the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. So I'm going to have my calculator here handy dandy so we can use. I wonder if it shows. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm going to move it over for now. But let's kind of look at our first three problems. So right here, we're going to go ahead and set up the problems. We're going to set them up, and then we'll go back and work them out. So right here, this is going to be our theta, our y. So we're going to say, hey, and again, that becomes the opposite, and this is the adjacent side. So as we set this up, we say, hey, tangent of y, because that's what we're looking for, y is equal to my opposite side, 3, over my adjacent side, 4. This is going to be our theta here. So we'll do tangent of 30 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And then this one down here, we're going to go ahead and use the 32. 32 will be my theta. So we're going to do tangent of 32 equals the opposite side. In our case, is x over the adjacent side, 22. So hopefully we all set them up the same way. So let's go ahead and actually work those out, see how we get the answers. So we're going to start backwards. We're going to look at this first one right here. So just like any other problem, if you're looking for x, we have to get rid of the 22. We got to get x by itself, we got to isolate. So we're going to multiply both sides by 22 here. And doing so, I got 22 times tangent of 32 will give you my x value. So we're going to try that out, see how that looks like if I take 22 times the tangent of what we're looking for. So in your calculator, hopefully you have a calculator, a handy dandy calculator here. I'm going to pull it. Hopefully you can see this on the screen because I don't know if it's in the same screen. But when you do this, and you can do this on your phone too, but in some calculators, you have to kind of work it backwards. You have to start the inside. You got to start with the 32. So we'll take 32, and then we're going to do the tangent of that. When doing so, you should get a decimal number just for tangent 32, like 0.6248 and so on. And then we're going to take that times 22. In doing so, you should finish with 13.747 or 13.75. That should be your length of that when you put this in the calculator. All right, let's look at the next one. So same concept here, and we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the denominator to get rid of it. We're multiplying by 5 radical 3. So on this particular one, this one's a little different. Here, in doing so, when you put it in the calculator, you'll still do it backwards. So, I mean, or if you have, an actual calculator, you can put it just like that. You do 5 radical 3, make sure you close your parentheses, then hit times tangent 30. And this should give you the right answer. It should be a whole number if you do it correctly. On my calculator here, you kind of do it kind of backwards. So you do 30, and then you do the tangent of that. Tangent. All right, so you should get a decimal point 55. And then I'm going to take that times 5 radical 3. So I'm going to do first 5, so times 5, and then times radical 3. So in the calculator, this particular calculator in computer, you have to do it kind of backwards. You do 3 square root, then equals. You should get the whole number 5. You did it right. So you should get 5 for this particular one right here. All right, let's look at this last problem. So this last problem, we're not looking for a side. We're looking for an angle. And I say last problem. There's actually one more right here. This in the calculator, you plug it in just like that. So either you'll hit, if you have the updated version of iOS, you should be able to hit tangent, then 41, and then hit enter. The older ones, you hit the 41 first, and then click the tangent button, and then it gives you the answer, which I think, let me double check. Let's see if we can pull it up real quick. Yep, right there. You should hit 40, then tangent. You should get 0.8390. Oh, it's 41, sorry. 41, tangent. You should get 0.86928, and so on. All right, but let's go back to this last one. We are needing to get y by itself. We need to get rid of y. We are trying to find the angle. So there's these inverses called arctangent. So to get rid of a tangent, you multiply it by its inverse, or tangent to the negative 1 power. When doing so, that contradicts the tangent it has right there, and then negates it. So now you just left with y. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side right here, tangent to negative 1. So then we end up having tangent to the negative 1 of 3 over 4. This is also known as arctangent. So in your calculator, when doing so, you do the same thing. On most calculators, you should be able to hit second, the second button, the 2 and D second, and where tangent was at should be your inverse tangent, or tangent to the negative 1. So in an actual calculator, you'll click that first, second arctangent, and you should see tangent to negative 1, or atan, A-T-A-N, because they represent the same thing. And then you put 3 divided by 4. If you want to put it as a fraction, you can put 3 divided by 4. On my calculator, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do 3 divided by 4 first, hit enter, get a decimal number, and then I'm going to hit inverse tangent. So I'm going to get second inverse tangent, or here. So now you hit second in there, and then you hit tangent to negative 1. Click on that. You get 36.869, or 36.87 degrees. So that gets you the degrees. And that's what we're doing when we do these inverses. We only use inverse when we're looking for degrees. So let's look at our other two. The other two are taught together because they're pretty much the same thing. Our next two are sine and cosine. So still having the same triangle here. We still have our theta. We still have our opposite sides and our adjacent sides. Our right angle, and of course our hypotenuse right here. So when doing these, you're going to look at the relationship. So you got opposite over the hypotenuse, or adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay, that determines which one you're going to use. So the question is always asked, like, hey, how do you know which trig function to use? Well, the question is, what are you looking for, and what do I know? Okay, those are the two questions you ask. What am I looking for, and what do I know? So I got 3 trig functions. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Correct? So this and that's the question you're always going to ask. Which one will I use? So let's look at our first problem here. So we're going to use angle 40 as our theta. Actually, no. We've been using that one down there. Let's use angle 50 up here, actually. Angle 50. This will be our theta. This will be our theta. Theta, not an 8, but theta. So that makes x our opposite side, and 12 is still our hypotenuse. So we ask, what are we looking for? We're looking for this side right here, and what do we know? This. So according to this, what uses opposite in hypotenuse? Sine. So when you go to set it up, you say, hey, sine of the angle, in this case 50, is equal to the opposite side, x, over the hypotenuse, 12. So mathematically speaking, again, we're trying to solve for x. We've got to get x by itself. So on paper, we will multiply both sides by 12, giving me 12 times sine of 50 equals x. Now this is what will go my calculator. So I don't know if you guys are able to see my calculator. I know because the screen kind of grabs just that certain one. But here, Actually, it should grab this whole screen. Hopefully it does show. So here you'll do it, on my calculator, you do it backwards. You do 50 and then sine, you get a decimal number, and then times 12. Done correctly, you should get 9.19. 9.19. If you're using this on a Android or iPhone, you want to use this on your phone, you should be able to plug it in just like that. So make sure you put the times button. So it'll be 12, hit the little X button, and then sign. It'll automatically pop up with parentheses and plug in your 50, and then hit the enter. And you should give you the answer right there. The same way. All right, so take a moment, pause, and do this on your own. I'm going to set them up. So I'm going to use 37 is my theta, so we're for sure using that, and we're looking for x and y. So we're going to start with x. Since this is the angle that I'm for sure using, and that is for sure my theta, this is going to be considered my opposite side, and this would be my adjacent side. Adjacent, right here. And I'm going to find x, and I'm always going to use what I do know. I don't know y, so I'm not going to use y, but I will use x and the hypotenuse. So opposite and hypotenuse, for the first one to find x, we'll use sine. So we do sine of 37 equals x over 35. And for the other one, for y, since I'm going to be using adjacent and hypotenuse, that's my cosine. Cosine of 37 equals x over 35. All right, so let's kind of work those out. So here, just like before, I'll multiply both sides by 35, and let's plug that in the calculator. So we got 37 sine times 35. You've done correctly. You should get 21.06. 21.06. All right. On the other one, same thing. We're going to multiply both sides by 35. That goes away here by 35. Let's plug that into the calculator. So we got 37, and this time is cosine times 35. We're getting 27.95, so 27.95. Hopefully we got the right answer. We got a similar answer, so good job. So the last thing we're talking about are the actual inverse. So we already kind of talked about how to do inverses when you're trying to find an angle. So if you always set up your equation, sine of x equals my ratio. But then, so to find the inverse, you do the inverse sign on the ratio. So x here represents the ratio, same thing here, cosine the ratio, the inverse of the ratio, and the inverse of the ratio to get the angles here. So let's try this out. So here's two examples. We're going to go ahead and look for A here. This will be my theta up here. And we're going to look for B right here. This will be my theta down here. So on this top one, go ahead and pause and set it up. But hopefully you saw, all right, this would be my opposite. This would be my adjacent. So I'm going to be using tangent. So I'm going to do tangent, tan of theta equals opposite 6 over adjacent 20. I got to get rid of my tangent this time, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the inverse tangent, or tangent to the negative ones, inverse tangent. Crosses that out, giving me just theta, the angle I'm looking for. And on the other side, I got the inverse tangent of 6 over 20. So let's bust out our calculator, see what that looks like. So on this one, we'll do 6 divided by 20 first. You get a decimal number, and then we're going to do the inverse of that. Inverse tangent. So we get 16.699, or 16. The degrees are 16.7 degrees. All right, good job, everybody. Next one, which trig function will we use? Well, we get the opposite and the hypotenuse. Best case scenario, we're using sine. So we do sine of theta equals 3 over 15. All right, so again, I got to get rid of sine this time. So I'm going to use inverse sine. So sine to the negative 1, the arc sine. Sine to the negative 1. They cancel each other out, giving me theta on one side, the angle. On the other side, this is what we're putting in our calculator right here. All right, so we'll do 3 divided by 15. We get 0.2, and then we can do our inverse sine. We get 11.53. Now, one thing, let me put 11.54. 11, you round it, 11.54. One thing we did not talk about, and I'm going to talk about right now, is what happens if you have your calculator in the wrong setting. So one of the wrong settings that can happen is that you accidentally put it in radian mode. And most iPhones and Android, you'll see RAD in the screen where it has your numbers, and that's how you know you're in the wrong setting. So in this case right now, I'm in radian mode. So if I try to do the same thing, let's do the same problem. Do 3 divided by 15. So the math is still mathing, but when you do the inverse sign here, it gives you a completely different number because to it, it's looking at it in terms of radians. And radians uses pi. And since we're not dealing with pi, we're dealing with degrees, we're in the wrong setting. We got to get back to degrees. So most calculators, you just click the DEG to put it back in degrees or get rid of it, or the RAD. Just you guys see how your calculator works. I know that on the iPhones, if you're not in degrees, it'll say DEG, where it will say radian. And if you see RAD, the radians, that means you are not in there, or you are in there. So hopefully that helps, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.